I want to stick with other guys.
No, I don't.
Adam, I wasn't. You weren't what? I wasn't sober.
Are you high right now?
Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Patrick Cash. I wrote the film and made a brief cameo as Joe's dead friend in a photograph. And can I just invite 4 of the actors up to the stage for a very quick Q&A before we all go out for a drink. And it is the leads, DENHOLM, SPURR, TAOFIQUE, FOLARIN, Matthew Hodson and Jonathan Blake. Could you please come and join us? I'm going to kick off because I know we're a bit pressed for time. But TAOFIQUE, wonderful performance as Adam. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was just wondering why you think a film about HIV and chemsex is relevant to the gay community of today.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing with like today, I think it's gay culture, gay life, the hookup culture can be quite hard to navigate as a gay man. It doesn't matter what age you are. So I think a film like The Grass is Always Grindr really humanizes it, and a film like The Grass is Always Grindr is it's telling our story. And things like chemsex and HIV is still happening today, and it's really prevalent, and doesn't seem to be slowing down as far as chemsex goes. And people can feel lonely, and if they don't see themselves represented, they can feel even more alone. So something like The Grass is Always Grindr actually kind of gives people something to see and humanizes their story, and allows them to see themselves represented. So within that, they can have better methods to help themselves and not feel so lonely. Yeah.
Definitely. I think that loneliness is very prevalent. And also there's this kind of feeling that like a lot of people are, if I find a relationship, then everything will be okay. But actually there can be, as we saw in the film, intimacy issues within the relationship, which can like haunt people as well, which is something that we wanted to explore. Matthew, hello. Yeah. Lovely performance as Ryan, the sexual health worker. Yeah. And the 5016 Street worker actually got the kiss at the end. We thought it was going to be the boys, but it's actually the 5016 Street worker. Yeah.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, exactly. So you've obviously got quite an enigmatic storyline in that your kind of boyfriend Lost turns up in the background in some scenes, and he actually ends the film walking out. I was wondering if you thought that the AIDS legacy that the gay community has gone through still affects some of the issues today in terms of what we saw in the film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for people like myself and of my generation, and also of Jonathan's generation, we had an enormous burden of grief and of loss, and I think that's really affected a lot of people. I know that it's affected me, and I kind of really wanted to bring that to Ryan, because I think that's the story that we're telling. And I think that every generation has its own challenges which it faces, and I think what actually really comes very strongly through this film is that we see that challenge that my generation went through with HIV and with the loss and with the funerals and with the grief, but we also see the challenges that the new generations are facing around chemsex, and they are also going through the loss and the funerals and the grief. And what I would say is that there are lessons to be learned from what my generation and Jonathan's generation went through, because we didn't just feel grief, but we got angry and we got organized. And that's what every generation needs to learn, and every generation needs to grasp that tightly, because we are facing really difficult times right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very important idea, that we can learn lessons between generations. And in fact, like if you go on Instagram sometimes, and like, you know, Joe's character, who's the Insta-obsessed Joe, sometimes seems like there's a cult of the youth and the perfect body, and it kind of ignores, you know, the wider variety and range of our glorious community. And going on to that, I was what we tried to show in the film was like intergenerational friendship can be very important, and passing on of wisdom. And Jonathan, like, do you think that sometimes the gay community, the current gay community, loses chances for that intergenerational friendship?
Yeah, I think it's one of the sort of the problems, you know, as one gets older, so one goes into bars less, so that you're not around the scene in the same way, and I think things have changed. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different, you know, scene to what I remember from way back. But I do think that it's important. I think it's important that we need somehow to find a way to be around to share our stories, because I think it's really important that we know our history. And I don't know how one sort of does that, but you know, films like this give the opportunity for people to begin to learn. So it's finding ways to actually sort of get out there and share it.
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, even just like starting the conversation, I think Alexis here? Alexis Gregory.
Yeah.
Hi, Alexis is here. Yeah. He played John Paul in the film, the sex host. And Alexis has a wonderful play called Riot Act, and the line that always sticks with me from Riot Act is one of the older characters who you interviewed, who was in the Stonewall riots, and who says at the end, you know, like, if you see an older person in a gay bar, go up and talk to them, say hello, have a conversation. They know you're not hitting on them. Just start that conversation. You could learn something wonderful, and I think that's a really like important thing that we can all learn from more. So in what you were saying about the scene having changed a lot, as we know, we've seen in the film, it has changed quite a bit, and in Alexis, John Paul scenes, we saw that particularly, which Joe was involved with. And Denham, when on the floor here, when the series went out on YouTube, you got a lot of commentators giving you a lot of flack, didn't they? They quite hated you for a while.
Really
Exactly. Why do you think drug use is such a contentious issue and provokes such emotional responses from people?
Oh, that's a really hard question, Pat. Thanks so much. I think there's something about drugs, particularly within the gay community as well, that I think that people that gay men that take drugs and gay men that don't are often divided in very clear lines, and in a way that they are divided in the straight community too, but not in the same kind of. There's not as much of a animosity between those two camps in the straight community. In the straight community, if you're like, oh, my friend takes drugs, I don't, but he can do what he likes, that's fine. Whereas in the gay community, sometimes, not in all cases, but sometimes it's a bit of like, you take drugs, ugh. And I think that there's something about that that informs and that's all tied in, I think, with internalized homophobia and everything else, that informs the negativity around drugs that we have in our community. Does that kind of answer the question?
No, it does, definitely. And I think like it's that paradigm of the kind of the good gay and the bad gay that gets into the community sometimes. And actually, we should be exploring these issues with more empathy and compassion for different people. I'm aware that we are pushed for time, so I'm going to come to my last question now before I make some announcements. And it is to Luke, who directed the film. Luke, what was your... and this is going to be maybe abstract. What was your vision for the film initially, and what would you like people to have got from it now?
Oh, God. The vision for the film... I think my initial vision was just like an internal scream. like at the scale and length of the project and the little amount of time we had to make it. But yeah, in terms of kind of what I think it'd be nice for people to take away from it, I think the thing that well, really kind of what Alan said at the start when he was introducing the film and saying how a lot of the characters in this film kind of do things, and this relates to what you were just speaking to Denham about, kind of do things that that if you were being unsympathetic might be seen as quite reprehensible. And I think that this series now film kind of hopefully humanizes those stories and enables people to kind of see through stereotypes and initial judgments that might be formed around certain behaviors and character types, and without being too sycophantic. Like I think you as a writer, you know, that's one of your greatest qualities. I think that there's a lack of judgment and a compassion across the board, kind of universally for the characters that you're writing. And I think this is really going to become like a series of very sycophantic statements, but that everyone within the company, you know, had a similar attitude and believed in the story that they were telling and in representing the characters that they were representing fairly.